Hidden error. Usage of native name is not recognized. Kulthum, born Fatima Ibrahima Saeed al-Biltajibi Hims Sajed al-Biltai, C. Kunya, on an uncertain date and who died February 3, 1975, was an internationally famous Egyptian singer, songwriter, and film actress active from the 1920s to the 1970s. She is given the honorific title Kawkab al-Sharq in Arabic. Known for her extraordinary vocal ability and style, Kulthum was one of the greatest and most influential Arab singers of the 20th century. Biography. Her birth date is unconfirmed, as birth registration was not enforced throughout the Arab world in that era. Born on December 31, 1904, her English-language biographer, Virginia Danielson, reported that it was May 4, 1904. At a young age she showed exceptional singing talent. Her father, an imam at the local mosque, taught her to recite the Quran, and she is said to have memorized the entire book. When she was 12 years old, her father disguised her as a young boy and entered her in a small performing troupe that he directed. At the age of 16, she was noticed by Muhammad Abu al-Ela, a modestly famous singer, who taught her the old classical Arab repertoire. A few years later, she met the famous composer and oudist Zakaria Ahmad, who invited her to come to Cairo. Although she made several visits to Cairo in the early 1920s, she waited until 1923 before permanently moving there. She was invited on several occasions to the house of Amin Bey al-Mahdi, who taught her to play the oud, a type of lute. She developed a close relationship with Ruhaya al-Mahdi, Amin's daughter, and became her closest friend. Kulthum even attended Ruhaya's daughter's wedding, although she normally preferred to avoid appearing in public. Amin al-Mahdi introduced her to the cultural circles in Cairo, where she carefully avoided succumbing to the attractions of the bohemian lifestyle and, indeed, throughout her life, stressed her pride in her humble origins and espousal of conservative values. She also maintained a tightly managed public image, which undoubtedly added to her allure. At this point in her career, Kulthum was introduced to the famous poet Ahmad Rami, who wrote 137 songs for her. Rami also introduced her to French literature, which he greatly admired from his studies at the Sorbonne, Paris, and eventually became her head mentor in Arabic literature and literary analysis. Furthermore, she was introduced to the renowned oud virtuoso and composer Muhammad al-Khashoggi, who introduced her to the Arabic theatre palace, where she would experience her first real public success. In 1932, her fame as a singer increased through sales of her records to the point where she embarked upon a major tour of the Middle East, performing in important Arab cities such as Damascus, Syria, Baghdad, Iraq, Beirut, Lebanon, Tunis, Tunisia, and Tripoli, Libya. Prominence. Imagine a singer with the virtuosity of Joan Sutherland or Ella Fitzgerald, the public persona of Eleanor Roosevelt and the audience of Elvis, and you have Kulthum. Virginia Danielson. Harvard Magazine. Kulthum's establishment as one of the most famous and popular Arab singers was driven by several factors. During her early career years, she faced staunch competition from two prominent singers, Munira el-Mahdiya and Fathia Ahmad, who had similar voices. However, Munira had poor control over her voice, and Fathia lacked the emotive vocal impact that Kulthum's voice had. The presence of all these enabling vocal characteristics attracted many composers, musicians, and lyricists to work with Kulthum. In the mid-1920s, Muhammad al-Khashoggi, who was an oud player and a composer, formed her small orchestra, composed of the most virtuosic instrumentalists. Furthermore, unlike most of her contemporary artists who held private concerts, Kulthum's performances were open to the general public, which contributed to the transition from classical, and often elitist, to popular Arabic music. In 1934, Kulthum sang for the inaugural broadcast of Radio Cairo, the state station. Over the second half of the 1930s, two initiatives sealed the fate of Kulthum as the most popular and famous Arab singer: her appearances in musical movies and the live broadcasting of her concerts performed on the first Thursday of each month of her musical season from October to June. Her influence kept growing and expanding beyond the artistic scene. The reigning royal family would request private concerts and even attend her public performances. In 1944, King Farouk I of Egypt decorated her with the highest level of orders, a decoration reserved exclusively to members of the royal family and politicians. Despite this recognition, the royal family rigidly opposed her potential marriage to the king's uncle, a rejection that deeply wounded her pride and led her to distance herself from the royal family and embrace grassroots causes, such as her answering the request of the Egyptian legion trapped in the Fallujah pocket during the 1948 Arab-Israeli conflict to sing a particular song. Among the army men trapped were the figures who were going to lead the bloodless revolution of July 23, 1952, prominently Gamal Abdel Nasser, who arguably was a fan of Kulthum and who would later become the president of Egypt. Early after the revolution, the Egyptian Musicians Guild, of which she became a member, rejected her because she had sung for the then-deposed King Farouk of Egypt. When Nasser discovered that her songs were forbidden from being aired on the radio, he reportedly said something to the effect of, "What are they? Crazy? Do you want Egypt to turn against us?" It was his favor that made the Musicians Guild accept her back into the fold, but it is uncertain if that happened. In addition, Kulthum was a dedicated Egyptian patriot since the time of King Farouk. Some claim that Kulthum's popularity helped Nasser's political agenda. For example, Nasser's speeches and other government messages were frequently broadcast immediately after Kulthum's monthly radio concerts. Kulthum was also known for her continuous contributions to charity works for the Egyptian military efforts. Kulthum's monthly concerts took place on the first Thursday of every month and were renowned for their ability to clear the streets of some of the world's most populous cities as people rushed home to tune in. Her songs deal mostly with the universal themes of love, longing and loss. They are nothing short of epic in scale, with durations measured in hours rather than minutes. A typical Kulthum concert consisted of the performance of 2 or 3 songs over a period of 3 to 4 hours. In the late 1960s, due to her age and weakened vocal abilities, she began to shorten her performances to 2 songs over a period of 2.5 to 3 hours. These performances are in some ways reminiscent of the structure of Western opera, consisting of long vocal passages linked by shorter orchestral interludes. However, Kulthum was not stylistically influenced by opera, and she sang solo most of her career. During the 1930s, her repertoire took the first of several specific stylistic directions. Her songs were virtuosic, as befit her newly trained and very capable voice, and romantic and modern in musical style, feeding the prevailing currents in Egyptian popular culture of the time. She worked extensively with texts by Romantic poet Ahmad Rami and composer Muhammad el-Khashoggi, whose songs incorporated European instruments such as the violoncello and double bass, as well as harmony. Golden Age Kulthum's musical directions in the 1940s and early 1950s and her mature performing style led this period to becoming popularly known as the Golden Age of Kulthum. In keeping with changing popular taste as well as her own artistic inclinations, in the early 1940s, she requested songs from composer Zakaria Ahmed and colloquial poet Mahmoud Bey Ramel Tumsi cast in styles considered to be indigenously Egyptian. This represented a dramatic departure from the modernist romantic songs of the 1930s, mainly led by Muhammad el-Khashoggi. Kulthum had abstained from singing Khashoggi's music since the early 1940s. Their last stage song collaboration in 1941 was Raql Habib, one of her most popular, intricate, and high-caliber songs. The reason for the separation is not clear. It is speculated that this was due in part to the popular failure of the movie Aida, in which Kulthum sings mostly Khashoggi's compositions, including the first part of the opera. Khashoggi was experimenting with Arabic music, under the influence of classical European music, and was composing a lot for Asmahan, a singer who immigrated to Egypt from Syria and was the only serious competitor for Kulthum before Asmahan's death in a car accident in 1944. Simultaneously, Kulthum started to rely heavily on a younger composer who joined her artistic team a few years earlier, Riyad al-Sonbatter. While Sonbatter was evidently influenced by Khashoggi in those early years, the melodic lines he composed were more lyrical and more acceptable to Kulthum's audience. The result of collaborations with Rami, Sonbatter and Al-Tunisi, Ahmad was a populist and popular repertoire that had lasting appeal for the Egyptian audience. In 1946, Kulthum defied all odds by presenting a religious poem in classical Arabic during one of her monthly concerts, Saluk Albi, written by Ahmad Shawki and composed by Sonbatter. The success was immediate. It reconnected Kulthum with her early singing years, defined Sonbatti's unique style in composing and established him as the best composer of music for poems in classical Arabic, toppling Muhammad Abdul Wahhab. Similar poems written by Shawki were subsequently composed by Sonbatter and sung by Kulthum, including Wolida el-Huda, in which she raised eyebrows of royalists by singing a verse that describes the Prophet Muhammad as the Imam of socialists. At the peak of her career, in 1950, Kulthum sang Sonbatti's composition of excerpts of what Ahmad Rami considered the accomplishment of his career, the translation from Persian into classical Arabic of Omar Khayyam's quartets. The song included quartets that dealt with both Epicureanism and redemption. Ibrahim Naji's poem, Al-Atlal, composed by Sonbatter and premiered in 1966, is considered by many as Kulthum's best song, while this is debatable, as Kulthum's vocal abilities had regressed considerably by then. The song can be viewed as the last example of genuine Arabic music at a time when even Kulthum had started to compromise by singing Western-influenced pieces composed by her old rival Muhammad Abdul Wahhab. The duration of Kulthum's songs in performance was not fixed, but varied based on the level of emotive interaction between the singer and her audience and Kulthum's own mood for creativity. An improvisatory technique, which was typical of old classical Arabic singing, and which she executed for as long as she could have, was to repeat a single line or stance over and over, subtly altering the emotive emphasis and intensity and exploring one or various musical modal scales each time to bring her audiences into a euphoric and ecstatic state known in Arabic as tarab. For example, the available live performances of Yaz al-Emni, one of her most popular songs, varied in length from 45 to 90 minutes, depending on both her creative mood for improvisations and the audience request for more repetitions, illustrating the dynamic relationship between the singer and the audience as they fed off each other's emotional energy. The spontaneous creativity of Kulthum as a singer is most impressive when, upon listening to these many different renditions of the same song over a time span of 5 years, the listener is offered a totally unique and different experience. This intense, highly personalized relationship was undoubtedly one of the reasons for Kulthum's tremendous success as an artist. Worth noting though that the length of a performance did not necessarily reflect either its quality or the improvisatory creativity of Kulthum. Some of her best performances were 25 to 45 minutes in duration, such as the 3 available renditions, including the commercial version of Ella Wila Fil Garam and Ana Fi Intizarik. On the other hand, her songs as of the mid-1960s would extend sometimes over a duration of 2 hours. However, the repetitions, mostly executed upon the request of the audience, were often devoid of creative musical improvisations, and limited to vocal colorful variations on a syllable, letter or word. Around 1965, Kulthum started cooperating with composer Muhammad Abdul Wahab. Her first song composed by Abdul Wahab, Enter Omri, was considered the summit meeting. Several beautiful songs composed by Abdul Wahab followed, such as Amal Hayati, Fakaruni, and others. Her songs took on more a soul-searching for Egyptians in 1967, following the defeat during Six-Day War. Hadith al-Ruh, which is a translation from the poet Muhammad Iqbal Shaqwa, set up a very reflective tone. Generals in the audience are said to have been left in tears. Kulthum also sang for composers Muhammad El-Mughni, Saeed Mikawe and Balil Hamdi. Death and funeral. The Star of the East died February 3, 1975, at age 76. Her funeral procession became a national event, with around 4 million grief-stricken Egyptians lining the streets to catch a glimpse as her cortege passed. Even as many as the crowds that attended the funeral procession of Kulthum's contemporary, President Gamal Abdel Nasser. Artistic legacy. Kulthum has been a significant influence on a number of musicians, both in the Arab world and beyond. Among others, Jawabal has claimed her as a significant influence on his work. Bob Dylan has been quoted as saying, "She's great. She really is. Really great." Maria Callas, Marie Lafort, Bono, Robert Plant, among many others, are also known to be admirers of Kulthum's music. Youssou N'Dour, a fan of hers since childhood, recorded his 2004 album Egypt with an Egyptian orchestra in homage to her legacy. One of her best-known songs, Enter Omri, has been the basis of many reinterpretations, including one 2005 collaborative project involving Israeli and Egyptian artists. She was referred to as the Lady by Charles de Gaulle and is regarded as the incomparable voice by Maria Callas. Kulthum is remembered in Egypt, the Middle East, and the Arab world as one of the greatest singers and musicians to have ever lived. It is difficult to accurately measure her vocal range at its peak, as most of her songs were recorded live, and she was careful not to strain her voice due to the extended length of her songs. Even today, she has retained a mythical status among young Egyptians. She is also notably popular in Israel among Jews and Arabs alike, and her records continue to sell about 1 million copies a year. In 2001, the Egyptian government opened the Korkab al-Sharq Museum in the singer's memory. Housed in a pavilion on the grounds of Cairo's Manestali Palace, the collection includes a range of Kulthum's personal possessions, including her trademark sunglasses and scarves, along with photographs, recordings, and other archival material. Voice. Kulthum had a contralto vocal range. Selected discography. Agadan al-Kark Makam Ajam, Anafayent Sarak, Alf Layla wa Layla, Makam Nahawand, Arawli Min or Araklamin, Makam Rast, Al-Atlal, Makam Huzam, Amal Hayati, Sono, Ansakya Salam Makam Rast, Akbar al-Layl, Arika Asir al-Dam, Orwith, Aini Makam Kurd, Baidanak, Makam Bayata, Betfakergovernment, Makam Bayati, Daliliata Makam Kurd, Dekrayatun, El Hob Kolo, Makam Rast, Entel Hob, Makam Nawand, Enter Omri, Sono, Makam Kurd, Esal Ruhak Makam Hugaz Kar, Fakaruni, Makam Rast, Fit Almar, Ad Sono Cairo, Makam Sikar, Garib, Elabar Berajar, Gulat Saleh, Hadith al-Ruh, Makam Kurd, Hagartek or Hajartak Emi, Hasabak Lil Zaman, Hadahi Laylati, Makam Bayata, Hayat al-Bmaak, Makam Nawand, Hakam, Elena al-Hora, Hobih, Makam Bayata, Hawasai el-Hawigalab Makam Saba, Kalal Ahabar, La Diva, CD, Emmy Arabia, 1998. La Diva 2, CD, Emmy Arabia, 1998. La Diva 3, CD, Emmy Arabia, 1998. La Diva IV, CD, Emmy Arabia, 1998. La Diva V, CD, Emmy Arabia, 1998. Lilat Hob Makam Nahawand, Lel Sabr Headed Makam Sikar, Lesser Faker, Makam Ajam, Menagl Inike, Othkoreen, Raql Habib. Retrospective, Artists Arabes Associes, Rithab El Huda, Rubaiyat El Kayam Makam Rast, Sarat El Hub Makam Sikar, Tufwi Shuf. The Classics, CD, Emmy Arabia, 2001. Widarat Ilayam, Makam Nawand, Ya Karawan, Yali Khan Yashki Kanini, Ya Mount Sahani Makam Rast, Ya Zalemni Makam Kurd, Zalemna El Hob.